Hi everyone, welcome to our session on card tokenization today. To start with a brief introduction, we know that in 2020, the RBI directed merchants and payment aggregators to stop storing card data, and an initial deadline that was set for this was March 31st. So after a request for relaxation, the RBI extended this deadline to December 31st this year. And in an important development, in September this year, it also permitted card on file tokenization. Now, this is an important development because it finally legally permits an industry-wide solution for the card restrictions on card data storage. So what tokenization essentially does is the sensitive 16-digit card date number is replaced with a uniquely generated token. So we are here to clarify what this exactly means for you, whether you are a merchant or whether you are a customer or whether you are just any player in the payments industry. So joining us today is Ravi Datla. He is the Vice President of Digital Products for MasterCard South Asia. Ravi drives tokenization solutions, digital first programs, digital use cases for retail payments and remittances, etc. at MasterCard. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ravi.
Thank you, Ashita.
Yeah. Next, we have Yogesh Miglani. He's a Senior Product Manager at Cashfree Payments. He works on Cashfree's core payment gateway and helps develop merchant-facing payment collection solutions. Welcome, Yogesh, and thanks for joining us as well.
Thanks, Ashita.
Yeah. I myself am Ashita Regidi. I head policy at Cashfree and work on regulatory and policy developments in the payments and banking space. So I will be moderating the session today. We're looking at a discussion of about 30 minutes, followed by 15 minutes for audience questions. So if anyone in the audience has any questions, please leave it in the chat session and we will attempt to take it towards the end of the session. So before we dive in, let's start with a poll question for the audience. Maruti, could you go ahead with that? Okay, so we have results here. 22% believe that merchants can save 4 digits, last 4 digits only. 39% believe that a merchant won't be able to save anything at all, and 39% believe that the merchant can save the card number if it is PCI DSS compliant. So we will attempt to explain this, answer the question more specifically for you all over the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. Yogesh, I'd like to start with you. I think the first thing we want to understand is what is the significance of a card number for a card payment to happen? Like, what role does it play in that flow? So could you explain what changes now?
Sure. Thanks, Ashita. So given the context of saving cards, right, like broadly payments through cards can be classified into 2 buckets. Like first bucket is a payment through a new card. Like I think people would have gone through that flow wherein you go to a website, you enter your first 16 digits of the card number, you enter the expiry, you enter the CVV, and that is where you authenticate the card, which is followed by an OTP-based authorization. So this is like a normal new card payment flow. The second flow, which generally from a saved card perspective, merchants might have experiences like the card is already saved, wherein the 16 digits of the card number we spoke about earlier, right? They are saved in a compliant server. The expiry date is also saved along with that. The customer doesn't have to remember either the card number or the expiry date. They just end up entering the CVV, which is again followed by the OTP-based authorization. So these are the 2 flows which you would have experienced like while transacting on any e-commerce player. Now to answer the question, right, what are the benefits of this? Like what do safeguards do for a merchant? So broadly speaking, there are like 3 major benefits that I see here. One is better experience. As a customer, it's impossible to remember the 16 digits. Though it's possible to remember the CVV of the card and then the OTP is dynamic. There is a higher probability of conversion from a merchant perspective, right? So as a customer, I might not have access to card at all the times, but if the card is saved on the platform, I'll directly go to the platform, select my card, enter the CVV, which is a 3-digit or a 4-digit number that I can remember, and then I can go through the payment. And obviously, the 2 factors combined result into a better success rate for the merchant because errors originating from entering an incorrect card number or entering a wrong expiry of the card, right? They get addressed by saving the card. So broadly, there are like three major benefits. Now, what happens now to answer that, right? Like from a PAPG perspective, saving customer card requires going through compliance clearance and certification, which in itself is a resource and time-consuming process. This is where players like cash-free payments come into play, wherein we assist the merchants to store these card details, right, onto our compliance servers, and we go through that compliance clearance and certification, and we invest our time and resources into bringing out a solution in the market that merchants can readily integrate with. So that way, a merchant can ensure that the three major benefits we spoke about, right, they can be availed by the merchants without having to go through the hassle of going through like compliance requirements, but at the same time being compliant. Now, this entire concept of saving the card is what RBI has presented, that you can't save these cards, be it a PA or a PG or the merchant. You can't save these 16 digits or the expiry of the card. And that is where solutions like tokenization or card on file tokenization are required in the market.
Okay, thanks, Yogesh. I think that's a good summary of why a merchant or even a customer would benefit from something like card on file tokenization. Now, the framework also impacts the ecosystem as a whole, and come to Ravi over there. Now, network issuing banks can act as token service providers, and card networks even previously could provide device-based tokenization, like what you saw with GPay. So what happens now? How is the ecosystem implementing COFT at an industry-wide level? How is it going to happen?
Thanks, Ashita. I think I'll take a step back and maybe try and put context in terms of how tokenization has been implemented in India over time, right? So in 2019, RBI has permitted tokenization framework in the country, and this was limited to networks providing tokenization solutions, and it was approved for a specific use case. It was for device-based tokenization. Now, what does this really mean? It is exactly how Apple Pay or Google Pay has been working globally. And in fact, there's a lot of launches of Samsung Pay, Google Pay, Paytm, and a few others launching in the country, where a customer primarily uses his Android phone to tap and pay on an NFC terminal. So technically, you are utilizing the NFC of the phone and tapping on an NFC terminal to make payments. Now, that's the primary use case, and one of the secondary use case of this particular regulation is also to be used for in-app payments. Again, there's a device binding requirement, and it obviously serves only a limited set of audience in this country. Now, come to 2021, RBI has expanded the overall tokenization framework to include card on file as well, because as part of the PAPG guidelines, the ecosystem is not expected to store card data. Now, the only way you will solve it is allowing ecosystem players to roll out the solution. So RBI has very clearly permitted only two kinds of entities to do this. One is a network, and second is an issuer bank. Now, there are also a few requirements that have been put forward for the rest of the ecosystem to ensure. Now, the first and foremost is RBI says a token request can be done only after an explicit consent given by the customer, and that consent needs to be done with additional factor authentication to be done by the issuer. Now, this would happen technically, this is going to be the merchant's obligation, because the merchants are going to implement this consent, and the merchants are expected to use the existing 3DS rails to do the AFA before a token request is being generated. So that's the first step. On the second step, once a token is generated, is the merchants and the aggregators will use a token instead of a PAN, instead of a card number, to do transaction processing. So these are the two important work streams that the ecosystem is working on. Now, on the first work stream, we need to get the issuers, the banks, to make necessary changes so that they're enabling tokenization requests. So in that process, there's been a significant development for everyone's update. All major banks have done necessary changes and are today enabling tokenization requests on their platform across various networks, including MasterCard. And on the other side, there are merchants and payment aggregators who are integrating into network tokenization solutions to enable conversion of a card into a token. And you would see enough news with respect to this services being rolled out. Now, on the second piece, once a card is tokenized, is where the ecosystem is currently preparing, where all the acquirers, payment gateways, say switch providers are doing necessary changes to ensure they're able to pass through the tokens instead of a PAN in the entire value chain of the transaction. So everyone is rushing towards the deadline of the 31st December to ensure compliance for the entire market.
Thanks, Ravi. I think that's a good overview of what the requirements are for every single player, of starting from the merchants to the banks to the card networks. So coming back to you, Yogesh, I think merchants and businesses will have a concern about practically what it means in terms of implementing this, complying with the requirements. Like say they cannot store card data anymore. You now need a token requester. So what does it mean for them? How will they comply with this new regulation?
Sure. So see, from a merchant perspective, right, there are two ways of implementing tokenization, or rather there are two ways of coming to a solution which helps them save the cards. Right? One is they directly work with schemes and become a token requester themselves. What this essentially means for a merchant is they have to adhere to the guidelines and the compliance requirements that schemes present, and then they work with them to generate and process the tokens and store them as well. So there is one way that you directly work with schemes and then become a token requester. The other way for a merchant, which is a bit easier for a merchant, is they work with a TR, which is a token requester, or a TSP, which is a token service provider. In India's context, that's generally the aggregators that are there in the market, who essentially help them generate these tokens, process them, and manage the entire life cycle of the token, wherein they will help them, store the cards, generate the tokens from those cards, store those tokens, and then manage those tokens until their life cycle is expired, and then regenerate them. Now, in order to implement this service, right, like there are three important guidelines specifically from a merchant perspective that should always be considered and kept in mind. The very first and foremost, I think Ravi also pointed it out, is taking a customer consent and then doing an additional factor of authentication. That AFA, or the additional factor of authentication, is nothing but the OTP-based transaction flow that we generally experience on cards. Taking a consent and an explicit consent is a required param as of the guidelines. The consent should not be a forced or a pre-selected consent. Essentially, what this means is a merchant cannot request token generation unless and until the two-factor authentication and the 3D secure OTP-based flow has been successfully executed by the customer. This is the first and foremost requirement that has to be kept in mind from a merchant perspective. Second, I think it's simpler, wherein a customer should have the option to deregister their tokens directly from the platform they registered or they gave a consent from. And this should be available anytime they would want. And third, I think this is again an important one, is the merchants or the aggregators will have to delete the saved cards if they had stored any saved card onto their platform on or before 31st of December 2021. Now, there are two things that arise from it, right? If a merchant is able to take a consent and tokenize the card before 31st of December, the customer will not have to go through the process of entering the 16-digit card number after 31st of December. For some reason, if a merchant is not able to take that consent, right, the customer's saved card will have to be deleted from the servers. And the next time that customer comes onto the merchant's platform and tries to transact using the saved card, there won't be a saved card for the customer, and they would have to end up entering the 16 digits of the card. Now, considering these factors and considering the importance of tokenization, right, like considering the importance of saving the cards and then processing the tokens, Cashfree has come up with a Cashfree Payments Token Vault, which is where we comply with these requirements and guidelines. We have invested heavily in this project to ensure that our product is easy to use for the merchants, and also at the same time is compliant and is ready as we hit the deadline. At the same time, we have also to ensure that the customer's perspective is considered, because if we don't tokenize the card before or on 31st of December, the customers won't be able to use their saved cards, which again would lead to the initial problems as I discussed, right? There would be lesser chance of conversion, there would be lesser success rates, and there will definitely be a discomfort to the consumers when they transact on different platforms.
Thanks, Yogesh. I think that also gives us a direct segue to the next segment, which is the customer perspective, essentially. I think we also have one more poll question for the audience here. Maruti, could you go ahead with that? Okay, so here are our results. 54% believe that there will be initial friction, but overall it will build trust. So great. So coming to you, Ravi, I think Yogesh already touched briefly upon the impact on customers, but maybe you could elaborate here. So the card data storage was seen to introduce a lot of friction into card payments. So now that you have CUFT permitted, does this ease things?
No, I think we need to first get into the principles of it, right? Why do we have so many regulations coming in? What is the whole scene about the regulator rolling all of this out? One thing we need to be very clear: India is one of the fastest growing digital payments market in the world, and from a real time payments point of view, we're the biggest by far. Now, it is important that we need to build strong trust in the overall ecosystem. Now, the primary risk that we are looking at is, given the kind of ecosystem players and the kind of merchants that we have in this country, we are combining customers' PII data and customers' PCI data, which is card data, together in a single database today. Now, if there were any attacks, enterprise level attacks, and we've seen enough in the last 2 years that in the best of best infrastructures have been breached. So in these scenarios, the overall risk profile of our digital transacting customers goes up significantly, and all you need is 1 or 2 breaches to happen, because once this customer PII information and card credentials are lost for active digital transacting customers, it's a risk across all platforms. Now, the reason the regulation first says that the merchants and payment aggregators do not store any card data is to say, okay, now the job of the merchants is to bother about their customers. So they rather focus on the PII data, and let's move away the PCI data away from them. Now, that's the first principle. Now, when you move the PCI data away, how do you ensure that the overall risk is limited to the entire ecosystem, right? Now, if you see the latest tokenization guidelines, token is defined as a unique combination of the cardholder, the token requester, and a merchant. So even if in case there's any potential breach, that particular credentials or the token will be traceable and also will ensure it is limited to the particular merchant where the breaches happen. So the risk profile for the end customer is significantly reduced. Right now, that is the story that we as ecosystem players need to understand. Now, for the customer, actual customer, does he really realize what is the difference? Maybe not. In the period of transition, because there is expectation of deletion of card data in a very short duration, there will be a one-time effort for the customer to come and enter his details and give the second factor authentication. But for the customer, it is only going to get better because one, his saved cards are going to become a lot more secure. The overall success rate on tokenized rails, we've seen a difference of at least 5 to 7% when this was implemented in various other regions. And with the little implementation that has happened in India as we speak, the success rates are sounding much better than what we've seen globally. So that's a very good sign from a customer checkout experience, right? Second, there also this particular product allows some UI UX enhancements that you could bring, right? Today, when a customer saves their card, he sees his card first 4 digits and first 6 digits and last 4 digits in a text format or in a box point of view. Tomorrow, the merchants and the aggregators can give a UI UX experience where the customer is able to see his actual card art, right? The exact card that he is able to see in his physical hand. You might be able to replicate it. It's obviously an optional feature and it will evolve over time. But these are few nuances that the customer will start seeing. And another very important difference that the end customer will see is today the customer has no visibility, and you and I, all of us have been saving cards with various merchants over the last 5 years, 10 years from the time we've started using cards. We do not know which all merchants we've saved card data. With the tokenization framework coming in, the customer can go to their issuer, which is the bank, and just call up the call center and go to their web portal and check which all websites he's stored his card. Now, if he wants it, he'll continue to keep it. If he wants to delete them, he'll be able to delete it through his bank. So this is extreme upgrade from the current ecosystem where the customer has a lot more control, customer has a lot more trust, and the overall safety security profile of the entire ecosystem is taken multiple levels up.
So I think that sounds very interesting, and also that customers will have a much safer experience with card payments. So thank you for sharing that. I think we'll now move on to some quick FAQs. Since we don't have too much time, let's do it very quickly. So Yogesh, can the actual card token be saved, and can it be saved without a successful transaction?
No, so without a successful transaction, right? As I mentioned, without a 3D secure OTP, which is like an OTP-based transaction in India, a token cannot and should not be provisioned with the networks, and then should not be saved. So only for a successful transaction, a token should be provisioned and saved.
Maybe Yogesh, I'll add one point to it. So we can also, the merchants can also look at building a unique flow where they say they would want to give a customer an option to just save the card. And as part of it, they can initiate a 3DS request. And only after a successful 3DS, they can save the card. This need not be combined with a checkout transaction. So this can be done independently, but predominantly those are the flows that you would see as a minimal flow. Majority of the customers would actually come to the platform only when they want to check out. And only after a successful 3DS authentication is where a token request has to be requested.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Ravi. So Yogesh, one more. Will all card schemes work as a part of token world?
To begin with, what we are looking at is MasterCard, Visa, and RuPay. And then eventually, as we build out the solution and there is adoption, then we'll look about implementing this for the other schemes as well. So to begin with, we are targeting like the predominant players in the market, and as I mentioned.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ravi, so quick questions. Expiry of tokens, how does it work and what happens post expiry?
So I think the token expiry is set as a risk profile by the token service provider. In this case, it's networks, and subsequently the banks would have all of them. But from a MasterCard point of view, the tokens have a validity of 3 years. And post expiry, the customer will have to, obviously we have lifecycle management where if the customer is willing to continue his safeguards, the token will automatically be updated.
Okay. What happens with refunds and chargebacks?
So now, I mean, just for simplification, right? A token is exactly a 16-digit number, similar to a card number, just that it is a proxy number. So in the entire downstream value chain, especially for saved cards, right? I mean, I'm talking specifically for saved cards. The reconciliation operations, the chargeback operations, all of them will continue to use the 16-digit as a primary identifier. In cases where the customer is using his card credentials fully as a guest checkout or a new user, they will come out as the card number, the 16-digit card number. And where cases the customer is initiating transaction using his saved card details, then it will come as part of a token. But from a technology and an operations point of view, it continues to remain as a 16 digits.
Thanks. One last question. What about guest checkouts? Basically flows that don't depend on card on file data.
The guest checkout, I think, is a little open item in the market because the PAPG guidelines suggest that all card data has to be deleted. But if a customer is actually entering his 16 digits, the card data is required to manage the entire life cycle, including refunds and chargebacks. So that is something that is being taken up as an industry as a clarification from the regulator, and I do not see an immediate impact on that front. The current focus is on the saved cards, which is the card on file, and the industry is implementing the solutions there.
Okay, all right. So last question before we move on to audience questions. So I think with the recurring payments deadline that came in this September, we saw widespread disruption. So are we going to see something similar in January? Is the ecosystem ready? What do you think the impact will be? I think Yogesh, can you go first?
Sure. So see, I believe that there would be some bit of a friction when it comes to the movement, and I think that's what our audience also believes, right? We ran up. There could be a scenario wherein certain issuers might not be ready with acceptance at the time we reach the deadline. Ravi has already confirmed that all the major and even the long tail banks from an issuing perspective are ready to accept the token, but there could be friction in certain, like, very long tail banks. That is the first friction that I could envisage here. Second, I think you've touched base on this, that if a customer has not tokenized the card, right, by the on the merchant's website by 31st, and they've not gone through a 3DS secure transaction, it could mean that the customer might come to the platform on, let's say, 10th of January 2021, and they see that I don't have a saved card, which essentially means that they reach out to their wallet, punch in the card details, look at the card, punch in the other details, and then tokenize the card if the tokenization service is available. So that is another friction point from a customer standpoint. And there is another one that I can think of is like processors not being ready to accept a network generated token. I think we know that, in general, the tokens which will be generated will have to be processed by different processors that are there. Apart from token generation from an issuer and network perspective, the acceptance of token might also become a friction point, but I think the entire network is working towards that. And this is just for a clarification that, in case there is a friction, the merchants should be, aware of it.
Okay, Ravi, your thoughts? Yes.
So I think it's an aggressive timeline, right? For 3 months for the entire ecosystem to make necessary changes. But if you really look at the kind of progress that has happened over the last 2 months, it's been significant. Now, the key and the most important aspect over the next 30 days is to ensure that we are looking at this entire flow end to end, right? Now, I don't really want to draw parallel from what has happened on SIA, because on SIA, the standing instruction, the industry has had at least 18 months, and there was enough time for the solution to be implemented. And eventually, for all stakeholders, it turned out to be a little bad experience. And learning from it, it is important that we need to test the flow end to end and ensure all the corner cases are fairly covered. So one important aspect that we as an ecosystem needs to now ensure is that we do not wait for someone else to start these projects for us, right? There's every ecosystem player now knows what needs to be done. Everyone's got options in terms of what they can do. So either, from a merchant point of view, they can either directly integrate with the network, or they can work with multiple service providers in the market like Cashfree to ensure they're rolling out the service. So the availability of service is taken care. Now, for the service to work end to end, there is delta that is expected to be done over the next 30 days to ensure that disruption is limited as much as possible.
Okay, great to hear that. So thanks, Ravi. Thanks, Yogesh. This concludes the discussion session of our session today. Maruti, I believe you had one last poll for the audience before we move to audience questions. So we'll move to audience questions. Some were shared with us at the time of registration and some have come in live. We'll try and take both. So the first question is from Deepesh Khiani. Can merchants store the first 6 digits? Ravi, can you take this?
I think the merchants are allowed to store the last 4 digits explicitly by the regulator. Having said that, the merchants have use cases with respect to bin ranges. The first 6 digits sometimes is the bin in itself, right? So the merchants have access to bin ranges and data already in the market. It's an open available data, but I don't think that is at a customer level, right? You use that for offers and stuff. It's at a program level and a range level, but at a customer level, individual cust ID, you should look at only the last 4 digits of the card.
Okay, all right. So Yogesh, this one is for you. So Kanishk Anand wants to know, how does this affect early stage startups?
Sure. So I think from an early stage startup perspective, right, I'm assuming it's an assumption, but it holds to a certain extent that the startup would not be PCI DSS compliant. And what that entails is that they would require someone, be it an aggregator or a gateway, for them to become a token requester on their behalf. And this is where the solutions like Token Vault will come into play, wherein they tie up with an aggregator. The aggregator becomes a token requester and the manager of the token on their behalf, wherein they maintain the life cycle of the token and as well as help them process the token. From an API standpoint, there will be minimal changes required for a startup to actually integrate with the providers in the market. It's more to do with the certain front-end changes that they'll have to do to accept the token, to take the consent. I think that is one of the major changes, plus few changes at an API standpoint. But majorly, the solution should work.
Thanks. So Sridhar Radhakrishnan is asking, what algorithm methods does Cashfree use for tokenization? Yogesh?
So when it comes to network tokenization, Cashfree is not the generator of the token. It's the schemes who are the generator of the token. And Cashfree will not be privy to what is the type of algorithm. But maybe Ravi can shed some light on this, right? Like how is token generated?
Yeah, I think I'll take that question, and I've seen one other question with respect to the overall timeline that a token needs to be stored and stuff, right? So the algorithms that are used by the network obviously are proprietary, but fundamentally, at least the larger international merchants follow the EMVCo standards, right? There is a tokenization standards set by EMVCo, and most parties follow those standards in terms of the kind of implementation that needs to happen. And second, and I think one clarity just for the techies who would be keen on understanding, a token in itself will not work in the entire transaction journey. There is something called cryptogram, which is a unique, say, security algorithm that is generated for every single transaction. Only when a token and cryptogram are combined together is when the transaction flows. So the entire security angle of ensuring that the risk profile is reduced is done using the cryptograms. So while the tokens are valid for 3 years, a cryptogram is unique for every single transaction and it needs to be generated for every single flow.
All right, thanks, Ravi. So one more question, Yogesh. Girija Srikanth is asking, can the same tokenized card be used by multiple aggregators?
Yeah, I think to some extent Ravi already answered that. The token which is generated can be used across the network, but that token always has to be accompanied by a cryptogram which is only valid for one transaction. So the way I see it, and this is more like a parlance to the ecosystem, is I see cryptogram as a dynamic CVV. Every time you have to use your card, you need a dynamic CVV. In the earlier parlance, we used to enter a CVV in order to make a saved card transaction. Now, the customer will not enter a CVV. They will just say that I want to use this card and process the transaction. A dynamic CVV, which will be provided by the networks on customers' behalf, will be used to transact and make that payment. So that will complete the entire flow and make it secure.
Okay, all right. So one more question. Jayesh Pandey is asking, previously, if the merchant was PCI DSS compliant, they could use the Seamless Pro version of PG and store data. How does tokenization impact that? As in, do merchants now need to be PCI DSS compliant or using Token Vault?
So yeah, so from a Cashfree standpoint, right, this is very specific to Cashfree. So earlier, if you were using Seamless Pro and sending out saved card, for tokenization, we have introduced a new version of our API. That API works very similar to the earlier version. It takes a consent at an API level that yes, the customer wants to save the card, and then goes about generating a token by using help from a network, stores the token in Cashfree's vault, and then when the customer again wants to process the payment, goes to the networks, generates a cryptogram, uses the token and processes the card payment on your behalf. So you don't have to be PCI DSS compliant. You can replace your existing APIs with the new Cashfree NextGen API, which will support tokenization as
well. Okay, thanks, Yogesh. So we've actually run out of time. There are several other questions, but yeah, no more time. So just closing thoughts, Ravi, what are your thoughts?
Sorry, I've been on mute. So I think overall, I do see a lot of questions and interest with respect to recurring payments. How is it going to work? So one primary thought that I want to leave on the table is for say 90% of the transaction volume, that is steady state checkout, where the customer checks out and the customer is saving the card details. The entire ecosystem is fairly ready, and it is in a situation that we will be able to push through. Now, for certain corner cases, now especially on recurring, the solution providers on recurring, there are only a couple of solution providers in the market today, so they are making this necessary changes for them to comply within the deadline. So we should, as ecosystem players, be prepared for some bit of disruption. But also, it is important that we still have 30 days. And if you see the overall effort for the players, especially the merchants, has been minimized quite a bit by the payment service providers like Cashfree, right? The amount of time it takes to integrate the new APIs. In fact, when we've rolled this out solution, we've got sizable set of merchants who've managed to complete integration and certifications as well. So it is not a very uphill task, but obviously it needs to be done fairly thorough. And we all need to put our heads down on execution over the next 30 days to minimize the disruption.
Thanks. Yogesh, your thoughts?
I think at an overall level, right, one thing that we have to be very cautious and very aware of is that consumers will not understand the concept of that, who's responsible for providing the service in the end. Their interaction is with the merchant. Their interaction is with the merchant's platform. Now, if you think about it, right, I'll take a very crude example. I use Zomato a lot. I save my cards on Zomato. My every transaction, then I go to that platform. I just enter my CVV and I go through a payment. Now, from a consumer perspective, come 1st of January, if I'm not able to see my cards, there would be two paths that I take. One, I shift as a consumer to UPI altogether onto that platform because UPI ID would already have been saved there, right? The other thing is, if I am a consumer who's not very conveniently using UPI, or I still want to use cards, I'll search for my card and input it. So from a merchant standpoint, it becomes very crucial that tokenization is put into play before the deadline is hit.
All right. So thank you so much, Ravi and Yogesh, for taking time out to join us today and clarify a few things for everyone. Hopefully, over the next 1 month, we will see all the loopholes sorted out and things will be in place by January. Thanks to the audience also for joining us today. A number of interesting questions. I hope the session was useful and I hope it helped you. If you have any further questions, you can send them at care@cashfree.com. So yeah, thank you everyone and have a nice day.
Thanks a lot, everyone.